Hey everyone, is my mic on this time? Yes, it is. Oh, I just recorded 2.5 minutes without turning my mic on. In this video, we are going to be painting the Hazmat Thugs, the mostly yellow Hazmat Thugs. And this is from Batman Gotham City Chronicles. What's it been, like 6 months now? Still can barely say the words. Is everyone still playing this game? I'm yet to play it, but I've nearly painted it all, which means I will be playing it soon. I'm just showing you one of the miniatures here. I've actually done all 4, and I am going to be batch painting them off camera, so they're all just bish bash bosh done. And I've primed this in Wraith Bone. That's that contrast primer by Citadel, because yes, once again we'll be using contrast paints. I've been out and bought a new one. It is the Iyanden Yellow, I think that's how you say it, and we finally get to see how yellow works with these contrast paints. Now, yellow is notorious for being probably the most difficult paint to work with, possibly equal to white, although I much prefer white actually. I've found a few ways of painting white that is still difficult but enjoyable. In fact, if you saw the video where my wife painted her first miniature, it was a white miniature and it really didn't faze her at all, whereas yellow, if she had to do 400 or 500 coats like you do, might have been a problem for her. Now, applying this contrast paint, I am using my Redgrass Games 2 size brush, and they only do two brushes, and this is the largest brush. I'm really enjoying these brushes actually for applying contrast paint. I think the large managed to slurp up enough paint to do quite a large area. Saying that though, in this particular miniature, I'm really being cautious how much paint I put on the brush. I'm really taking my time, and now contrast paints make painting really quick, but here I just really do not want to do 2 coats of this, and I don't want it to pool anywhere but the recesses. So you can see I'm taking the tiniest amounts of contrast here and applying it directly into the recesses where I want it darker, and then on the raised areas I'm being very careful not to leave any pooling whatsoever on any of those flat surfaces. So that is going to cost me a little bit of time up front, but I think A, it's going to make the miniature look a lot better by the end, and B, it's going to save me time in the long run. I'm not going to be trying to fix that later on if I've got some sort of wash marks on his knees where they shouldn't be. So I'm just taking my time a little bit there. Next up, we're going to be using some normal paint. So that's it, guys. That is the yellow applied, and that is after it is dried, so you can see exactly what it looks like. I am batch painting these, so there was plenty of time for that to dry while I batch painted the other 3. I'm going to be using Necromancer Cloak. That's the dark grey by Army Painter that I quite favour, and basically I'm painting the black parts now of this model. So he's got black boots, a black gas mask, and a black strap holding his gun on. And then I remembered, oh yeah, using the hobby holder, why don't I use this handle, which will make it infinitely easier for me to paint these fiddly little bits around his face, because I don't want to get any on his yellow. Now, you don't often see me use the handle, and I'll just reiterate that is purely because I find it gets a little bit in the way of the camera. It does not get in my way, and when I'm painting off camera, I'm using the hobby holder with its handle for basically every miniature I paint. So highly recommend those, and there is a link in the description below, as well as to that wash wizard that I was using, which is a holder for the Citadel paints, and it just stops you knocking them over. I learned very quickly they're a little bit easy to spill, these pots, so I've got a wash wizard. The one I used in the video was actually a prototype, but yeah, there's a link in the description below, 10% off if you want to go and check out any of these products. They're all from Game Envy. So I've downsized to my Redgrass Games brush, so this is the 00. So now I'm doing some detail work, and I'm just very carefully applying this Necromancer Cloak, which is essentially the black that I would like to use. It's dark grey, but I think dark grey gives you a lot larger spectrum to work with. We can darken it down a little bit to make it look more black, and you can highlight it up more easily with greys to make it look highlighted but still look like a black, whereas black I often find just looks like black. You can't darken it down, it's as dark as it can get, and if you want to lighten it up, you're going to be adding grey, which then looks like black with grey on it, which in some cases does actually look really good. Like fur, I think I often go black to grey. I think a nice grey dry brush looks good, and then if I'm doing some heavy metal style highlighting, again I think that looks really good, but for the majority I will be sticking with this dark grey, and it's very dark, it's quite close to black. I'm also painting his gloves, which I didn't mention. You can see I only did the tops of his boots as well, and that's because of this detail brush. Well, it's not that small, but it's small, and when I've got the size 2 available, I will be just doing the bit that's closest to the yellow to avoid making any mess, and then once that's once I've done all the detail work, I'm just going to get out the size 2 brush again and just go around the rest of the boot that's nowhere near that yellow hazmat suit that I've previously painted. And I don't mind it going on the base because I'm going to basically do an incredibly watered down version of this. So this is, I'm watering down all these paints except the contrast paint, so it probably was about 25 to 50, probably around the 25. Then for the base, I've gone down to 50 to 75% water. This is heavily watered down, and that's because I don't mind how it looks. I want it to look rough, I want it to look ready, I just want it to look like a ununiform pavement, I guess, or asphalt or something like that. For the metal work for his machine gun, I'm going to be using Army Painter's very aptly named Machinegun Metal, and that's their dark silver that I used, and I'm just going to apply it to all of the gun. I think I'll just stick it everywhere, and then I'll work out how to make it pop out a little bit and look a little bit more interesting, a little bit of detail after this is dried. And once I can pick some other colours out, probably just going to highlight in lighter silver, as we'll see momentarily. I'm also going to go around his gas mask, those two, what are they called, the like mask bits. So he's wearing his mask, he's got a visor, and then he's got the bits that hold like the carbon or whatever it is that filters out the poisonous hazard, but I'm going to just give that a silver rim. I'm also going to paint around his visor as well, just around the edge. I'm just going to do that with a silver rim as well, just give it a little bit of fancy pants. He's got a bit of metal goggles, which I guess on a gas mask, the rim of the glass may well be metal, right? I certainly can dig that. But saying that, while we do the rim around his goggles, I will switch down to my Army Painter's insane detail. So this is the only thing I ever say with these Redgrass Games brushes. They do say that you're the 2 paintbrushes you'll ever need, the only 2 you'll ever need, and I just think they're the 2 you need 99.8% of the time. Now and again, you are going to need to switch to another brush. Although the tips are really, really good. In fact, I'm just trying to remember. I think the ones I did off camera, at least one of them, I didn't switch to the insane detail, and that's just because the camera is in the way, so I just can't get my face close enough to see. So I switched down to a very small brush to do this with, without being able to see as well. But off camera, I definitely recall doing one of them. I can't remember if I had magnifying glasses on, but it's the tip sharp enough that you can paint this bit that I need an insane detail brush for. I'm getting very, very used to using those Redgrass Games brushes, and the tips are good. They've got a little guide hair as well, which I'm finally getting used to using, and I think that's working out really well. Definitely making the use of the handle of the hobby holder here, getting a really steady, firm grip. You can see I'm barely shaking whatsoever. I've got my wrists down on the desk, and then I'm sort of leaning into that handle as well, and it's giving me a really, really great grip. I'm going to start washing what I need to wash now, which is, it's just the metallics and the Necromancer Cloak. So I'm using the big brush, that's size 2, but I'm going to have to use the tip and be very careful when I go along that strap along his back, around his head. I don't want any of this to go on that Iyanden Yellow. Is it Iyanden? What is Iyanden? Somebody let me know in the comments below what Iyanden is. I'm also going to do his boots, his gloves, his gun, and the pavement as well. We'll probably go for a semi-heavy coat on the pavement, and I'm not going to be too careful to get this uniform. Again, I want that pavement to look realistic, to be ununiform, so it can be a little bit thicker in some places, a little bit thinner in others. And once that's dry, again, I am batch painted all 4 simultaneously, so by the time I get back round to the first one, although it's probably only about 15 minutes, the washes are all dry and we're ready to go again. I'm going to start by highlighting up the Necromancer Cloak, and I'm going to be doing so using that sort of custom colour that I've mixed, that Filthy Necromancer mixed with, no, it is Filthy Necromancer, it is Necromancer Cloak mixed with Filthy Suit, a light grey and a dark grey mixed together to give it a medium grey. And we're going to go around and I'm going to paint on each of his fingers, get his fingers back in there. I'm going to paint the edges of the strap holding his gun on, and then he's got some creases or folds in his boots, sort of around his ankle. I'm also going to highlight up his toe cap, which gives, you know, the impression that he shined his boots a little bit. He's got some polish on them, and he's got his toes out on show, and they're looking really, really fancy. But I'm not really sure why, given that he's going to a hazardous location, and you know, he's got his hazmat suit on. So why is his boots looking so nice? I should maybe have dirtied them up, but you know, you can vary from the tutorial, make yours look a little bit dirtier, less shiny. Maybe I I haven't varnished this yet, but maybe I will use a gloss varnish on his boots and really make them look like they're his best, shiniest boots. I'm going to use Shining Silver, the light silver by the Army Painter, and this is going to be to edge highlight his machine gun and pop out some of those details. So I'm getting his magazine, I'm getting any of the sort of bolts that are on the gun, and I'm going to go around all of the hard edges and just paint those back in. He's got some sort of ribbed effect for his pleasure on the end of his gun, and I'm just going to highlight up those ribs. I'm also going to catch a little bit of edge highlighting with this silver along that mask that's holding the filter, and then I'm going to use light denim, heavily washed down, heavily. This is probably 90% water. I'm just going to make a sort of wash for his visor, just give a sort of light blue, clear, whitish, you know, that sort of look on his visor. Just get a slight effect of glass, hopefully, is what I'm going for there. Not putting too much effort into it because it's a very small area. Then, ooh, a little bit fancy. For once, I'm gonna modify the base of this one. I've got this sweet acid scrub by Gatehouse Gaming UK. I'll leave a link in the description below for that. I'm going to take some PVA glue. This is Army Painter's PVA glue. And I'm just going to splurt when it'll come out. Just going to splurt a little blob on this miniature, and I'm again not too fussed how it comes out. If it's thick, if it's thin, if it goes thick then thin then thick again. Just getting a random amount because I want to put some of this hazardous acid scrub on the base and just give it it's a tiny change, because I've said that before with these Batman miniatures, they have got a textured base and I kind of just want to, you know, use that, get away with it for free. But in this case, I'm just really adding to it. I'm not replacing the base, I'm just putting a little bit on. So I'm going to dip that in the acid scrub, get him well in there, and then just pile this on top of the glue, really making sure it's completely covered, every single bit of that glue. The reason I'm doing that is so obviously it's not going all over the place, it's not all over my table, it's just going back in the pot, and then I'll tap off any excess, just gently allowing that glue to dry afterwards. But yeah, I really like this acid scrub, and I think it's a nice touch on the base. So yeah, link in the description below if you want to check that out. I also picked up some Fallout style wash, which was in that acid drop that I opened on the channel the other week, and it's a bright green wash, and I've applied that since making this video just on top of it, and it didn't really change the acid scrub, it looks exactly the same, but it did bleed out underneath and made a little pool around it, and I think it just made it look a bit more of a wetter concoction, which is a nice little finish to it. Finally, on the model, as I always do, I'm just painting the rim of the base in dead black or matte black by the Army Painter, using that 2-size brush, getting it nice quick coverage and really just bringing the attention back to the miniature. And that is it, guys. That's all 4 painted, and I didn't record the time because I was obviously doing it batch paint, and I could only really record the one that I've done, but it was like just over an hour for 4 miniatures, and I think I painted them quite slow even though it was contrast. And that's how the Iyanden Yellow looks, and I'm pleasantly surprised with that. I'm pretty happy. It looks a bit orange in the recesses, so quite yellow in places and then orangey in the recesses, but I'm more or less, that is completely fine. For the speed at which I did it, that is as good, if not better, than most of the yellow paint jobs I've done in the time. So I can spend a long time doing, you know, a good actual 5 coats of yellow and build one up to look that good, but it takes hours, so I'm happy with that. Let me know in the comments below what you think of that contrast yellow and if you'll be using it in the future. Thank you all ever so much for watching. I'll see you again next week.